I assessed Greg on Thursday, September 15th, after school at the Middletown Public Library. I had 3 parts to my assessment. The first part assessed Greg's processing speed. To do this, I gave him a very simple 6-word crossword puzzle. This was graded based on time. If he completed this crossword in 1 to 3 minutes, he was high. 4 to 5 minutes was average, and 6 minutes or more was low. I spoke to his teacher about how long it normally takes a kid in his class to finish a crossword puzzle, and she shared that a 5 to 6 word crossword puzzle normally takes about 4.5 minutes. So based on this assumption that it takes a kid 30 to 45 seconds to complete one word, that was then determined to figure out the low, the average, and the high. The second part of the assessment tested Greg's short-term memory. He was given 5 tasks that I repeated to him twice, and then I had him draw for 5 minutes before I released him to actually do the tasks. This was based off of percentage. If he completed 1 to 2 tasks, which is a 20 to 40%, he was low. If he completed 3 to 4 tasks, which is a 60 to 80%, he was average. And if he was able to complete all 5 tasks, he was 100%, which is considered high. This grading was strictly based off of the fact that in a normal classroom, 20 to 40% is failing. 60 to 80% is a D to a B, which is passing, and an A is 100%. The last part of the assessment tested his reading comprehension. He was verbally read a 3rd grade level passage called Amanda's Story. He then had to answer 5 simple reading comprehension questions. Again, this was graded based off of percentage. 1 to 2 questions correct is a 20 to 40% and low. 60 to 80% was 3 to 4 questions correct and average. And all 5 questions correct was 100% and high. As stated, this was graded the same way that in a normal classroom, 20 to 40% is an F and failing. 60 to 80% is a D to a B, which is passing, and 100% is an A. While completing the assessment, Greg was very cooperative and kept a smile on his face. He did what I asked him to do without argument, and he had a great attitude. I do think he gave his best effort on all parts. When I was speaking to his mother about the background knowledge, she did share that Greg is a people pleaser, that he likes to make his teachers and his parents happy, and he'll do whatever he can to do that. So a big part of that is doing his best in school and doing his best on his work. So I think he did his best in this assessment because he wanted to make me happy as well as his mother. As stated, he was very compliant. There were no distractions as I was able to book a private study room in the library. In this private study room, there was a small table with 2 chairs, and on the table there was a lamp. And then there was a small little table on the left side of the study room as well that had a pencil sharpener and a couple pencils in a box. The table that we worked at was cleared off during the assessment to make sure that there was no distractions. The only time he needed redirection was when he was completing part of the memory assessment. One of the tasks that he was asked to complete was wash his hands. So even though the bathroom was right next to the study room, so it wasn't a long walk, he did get distracted by a poster that was hanging on the wall that interested him. Greg did score in the low category on all 3 parts of the assessment. It did take Greg 6 minutes and 30 seconds to complete the 6-word crossword puzzle. He was able to remember 2 out of the 5 tasks on the memory portion. The 2 tasks that he was able to remember was crumple a piece of paper and throw it away and wash your hands. He was able to remember the wash your hands right away after the 5 minutes, but needed about 1 minute and 13 seconds after that first task to remember to crumple up the paper and throw it away. After he did both of those, he took another 2 or so minutes to think, but after the 2 minutes said he didn't remember what the other tasks were. On the verbal comprehension part, he was successfully able to answer 2 out of the 5 comprehension questions. The questions that he answered correctly were questions that were only 1-word answers. So from what I observed, I think he's more successful in 1-word answers, and he struggles with the reading comprehension questions that do require a little more thinking and a little bit more looking into the story. So while all three of these tests yielded a low score and they're clearly weaknesses for him, I think verbal comprehension is his weakest point. The story that I gave him was a 3rd grade level story, so it was below grade level, and he was still only able to score a 40%. Some strengths that I observed was that he was aware of his weak points, and he was trying to think of ways to help himself. For example, as I was reading the memory tasks, he first asked if he could write the tasks down. I told him no, that I needed to see if he could remember them. He then started verbalizing those tasks back to me after I read them. Additionally, during the verbal comprehension portion, he attempted to make personal connections with the main character in the story. He did need some assistance in this area, but he was able to make the connection that Amanda likes to talk about her day to her dad, and he likes to talk about his day to his dad. I do feel the assessment gave me the results I was looking for. Not only was I able to see how low he actually was in these areas, but I was also able to see strategies that he uses to help himself. I was curious before going into this assessment if he knew what his weaknesses were. And it was clear during this assessment that he knew that memory was a weakness for him and that he needed to try to figure out a way to help himself. Overall, I really like the assessment I made for him. The only change I would make is choosing a story that he could make more connections to. He's really into sports, particularly NASCAR. So if I was able to find a story his level that was about NASCAR, I think he would have been able to make more connections and gotten a better score. The only change I would make to the process is when I gave the assessment. Schedules were difficult to maintain, and we did the assessment when we could, but it was still after he went through a full day of school. So he was very tired. He was cooperative, but his medication was beginning to wear off by the end of the assessment. Doing it over the weekend when he had time to rest and he didn't have to go through a full day of school may have been better. The results I received do correlate with the diagnostic summary that I found in his folder. The summary said all three of these areas were areas of weakness for him. He scored low on all 3 parts of this assessment.